VGC is supported by Patreon. Check out patreon.com/videogameschronicle for more podcasts, ad-free browsing, and extra content. Thank you for your support.
Hi, I'm Simone Silvestri. I'm the art director for Saros.
I always come back stronger. I know that you are here, and I will find you.
So could you tell me how you got involved with the project, when you joined Housemark? Is this your first game working with Housemark?
Yeah, this is definitely the first game with Housemark. I joined a few years ago. The project was already ongoing, and I got to see a big part of the inception of it. And then when I started, I'm like, okay, this is a really, really cool project. I'm so happy that I can contribute to it meaningfully. And I think I got in just at the right time where, we were still making a lot of the decisions and I could influence the art style and the creative part of it. And it was just, I think, the perfect storm for me to join Housemark then.
And what were some of the early influences you were thinking about when coming up with the overall visual language of the game, the architecture of the game, things like that?
Yeah, so it's such a awesome opportunity to work on this game in particular because I love sci-fi, and with sci-fi you have a lot of creative blank space, and then it's on an alien planet, which is even more creative space. And that's always like, okay, we have thousands of ideas. Let's see where we go and draw upon. What I like to do is I like to look at the history of civilization. I like to look at mysticism, folklore, and then how do I abstract that? So we start from something grounded that you can latch yourself onto, and then we create contrast. We find something that is completely different. And I really like clashes. I like when things are not fitting together because it creates this nice visual friction. And usually there's always an interesting creative opportunity there. And then you have to apply visual identity and visual design to find that harmony that goes through the game in a consistent way. For the architecture, I really wanted to try neoclassical because we have this civilization of worship for the eclipse, and I was referring to, neoclassical is taken from classicism. I'm from Rome, so that's very comfortable for me as a space, and it's all about the worship of the ideas that are embodied by those gods. And so these huge statues, this grand scale, this quiet detail, which is very useful because we need to have a canvas and then paint with gameplay, so we cannot be too busy in the picture. And I tried it. I'm like, okay, this feels very safe. It's the right canvas, but it's very safe. And so I went to look at Italian futurism, which was actually created in the 1920s as a reaction to neoclassicism. And it was sort of a rebellion to it. And there was a big clash between these two because, classicism and neoclassicism is all about permanence, it's all about structure. And instead, Italian futurism was all about dynamism, impermanence, and, things that weren't supposed to be lasting forever. And when we joined them together, it created this very nice, intense, sharp language that still felt grand in scale, that still felt like it was celebrating something. And it took a little bit to mature. It's not easy to work with opposites, right? And when you tell it to the team, they're like, okay, how am I supposed to do this? But I was very happy that they gave me, a chance to prove it, and they were very patient with me. And, we worked through the team. And at some point, one of the artists made one environment, and I was like, that's it.
Yeah.
That's what we want. Let's find a way to scale this to the game.
You actually hit on something there that I was going to ask about. Obviously, this is a very gameplay-focused game, and there is so much incredible art, even from just the hands-on. But how do you balance with the fact that a lot of players are just focusing so much on the intense action? There are moments where things slow down, and there's lovely vistas and things like that. But as an artist, do you sometimes think, oh, don't run straight past that, don't dodge straight past all these hours of work?
That's a fantastic question. And, as an art director in Housemark, a lot of my job is get out of the way. Make sure that things are as clear as possible for the players, because we have this split-second decision-making space, these razor-tight encounters, and we don't want to get in the way of that. we don't want to stop the player. So I'm treating Arjun almost like as a Formula One car, right? And that's why we have a lot of arches in the game, because it feels good to go under them. It's almost like a time trial thing. And then there's a little secret for whoever wants to play this game and look at the art. It's just when you're done with the fireworks of combat, just look up a little bit. Because a lot of the detail lives at height. Because again, we wanted that mid space to be as clear as possible. So we put a lot of beautiful details just above the fighting space. And then, you get collaborations with the gameplay designers, which here they do so much crazy shit. I love it. So how do you go and emphasize that? Well, we collaborated on the patterns, for example. I made a presentation on hypnotic bullet patterns. And then they started doing some of the things. I'm like, yes, let's collaborate on that. And of course, they do like 95% of the job. So I'm not gonna take their laurels here. But then they start, level design starts putting the breadcrumbs in front of vistas without even talking to us. And I'm like, my man. And then you've got gameplay designers that come up with flying enemies so that now you're actually looking up and you get to see these details. So it's a really beautiful type of collaboration. But it is not easy to make art in a 10,000 miles an hour game. Especially on animation, right? It's like, how many frames do you have to do a melee attack in any other action game? Maybe 10, maybe 12. In here, you've got 4 frames. How do you sell expression in 4 frames? And sometimes you sell the expression on the impact of things. And it's about, where do I add the juice? Where do I go and really, really meaningfully enhance the action that you're doing? It's a very different challenge, and I really, really enjoyed it.
I also wanted to ask about the game is biome based, and they're very different kind of like visually, but obviously they have to share some kind of theming so that you don't feel like it's plucked from different games. How do you approach that when you go from the first 2 biomes that I've seen, a kind of wasteland area, to this like mechanical subterranean area? How do they share ideas and themes artistically?
That was one of the big focuses that I wanted to have for this game, is how do we do 2 things with the biome? First one is, let's give you a wider world. Let's give you this impression of this journey that you're taking, which is, a psychological journey, a power growth journey, but also a geographical journey. You see the city in the distance, you get to play in the city, and it's teased to you all the time. So we really wanted to have these epic open vistas, and the first moment you see it, you go, wow, this is awesome. And then the other thing that I really wanted to achieve is that I want you to be curious about the next bit. That's why the first 2 biomes are so important, because they are a little bit different from each other. And I want you to always think, what's going to be ahead? What's the next surprise and the next surprise? Because sometimes, this game can be hard at times, and you want to push through and you want to be rewarded for that. So the visual journey was a journey that we set for surprise, which of course, as you said, creates a challenge in, if everything is surprising, then how do you keep it consistent? And that's where we really attached ourselves to the narrative themes. It's a journey where you go through this transformation and you see the world transforming with you as well. And it needs to escalate, just like the narrative escalates. And sometimes it's all about, shaping it with the same idea of the madness that takes over Carcosa all the time. And whether it's a machine theme, whether it's, a biome with lush nature and the ruins, that's still shaped by madness. So there is a world logic and thought process that is attached to the narrative themes that allows us to make it feel consistent. And then we have some themes that return. I'm not going to spoil the next biomes, but as you will play the game on April 30th, you will be able to see, okay, this is a starting theme, and then it returns here, and then it evolves here, and it's always mixed and different every time you see it.
When you have those kind of themes, and you obviously, as you just explained, was there anything that you wanted to do that you thought, I have to accept that I can't fit this into what we're building here, or is there always some kind of way to bring it back around, at least in some way?
Always, man. That's the 1,000 sketches and ideas,
Yeah.
and then you're like, oh well, this is a fantastic idea. How do we fit it? And sometimes you fight to fit it, and you actually get into the game, and then you play it, and you're like, oh, this is awful. So you really have to explore. Video games are an iteration-based medium, and I would say 7 out of 10 iterations are failures. And that's okay. That's what our medium is made on. You need to fail and fail and fail as fast as you can, as efficiently as you can, and as happily as you can, and get to this nice essence of the result. So of course there's a few ideas that I was like, I think this is gonna work really well. And then we put it into the game, and I was like, no, we need to take this out. But I'm very, very satisfied with what ended up being there. And to be honest, I got a lot of wishes to come true. There is one biome in particular that I can't wait for everybody to play because it's my favorite. And I know it's going to be a big surprise. And that was like, I want this.
Yeah. Returnal was a very blue game. This is a very orange game. Was that intentional? Is it supposed to be kind of a contrast? Because there's a lot, especially when Saros was first shown, a lot of players saw the kind of Returnal. It's not influence because it's the same studio, but you know what I mean. It was very Returnal-esque, but it feels like from a color palette perspective, and especially from what I've played, there was Returnal there, but this is like a kind of the opposite side of the coin of Returnal. Is that intentional?
Well, the color palette and color journey has to describe the narrative, has to describe the psychology, has to have a job, So if we were just to take what Returnal is, it's like, but that worked for that game. That was a game about solitude. That was a game about this journey that you do by yourself. And in Saros, there's an additional difficulty, which is every biome has to escalate. So you don't just do one palette per biome. Now you have 2 to do.
Yeah.
There's the eclipse. You need to account for that. And that's a really, really difficult but awesome challenge because you need to always think, how am I going to flip this? So, of course, it influences the base look and then the eclipse look. And to me, the most important thing about the eclipse is that it follows you after the game is done. You remember that. And orange and the yellow tones and the red tones, that's the most aggressive type of tonality that we can do. And we, of course, don't want to let that be something that it doesn't fit. So there's actually a few surprises along the journey as to how the eclipse evolves. It's not only what you've seen. It itself escalates. It itself changes. But orange is a very deliberate decision. We have this tenet in art that we want to say that we have bright violence in the game. You have these neon bullets, you have gold as the color of power and corruption, and the eclipse itself is a bright sense of violence that eradicates the planet and changes it, and then the planet has to respond back to it. The enemies escalate, so it's a very deliberate idea to go and inject such a bold color. You have to remember that. It needs to haunt you after the game.
And obviously, as you joined Housemark for this game, you were well aware of the type of game that they do, the combination of like the arcade style visuals with this like hyper realistic visual style for the rest of the game. Is that ever a challenge, or do you think that's something that's so inherent to the Housemark style where you could like strip the game away to like grey box essentially, and as long as you could read the colours coming towards you? So where does your job fit into that in terms of meshing the two so they don't feel so contrasting with each other?
Oh, that's a lot of the job that I do. And like when I joined Housemark, I was a big fan already. My first game was Dead Nation.
Oh, nice.
I used to play that with my brother, and we were in the Italian top score.
Oh, really?
So
That's
we were
excellent.
sweating Dead Nation. And when I joined, I played that, Alienation, Super Stardust, and it was just awesome as the idea of, I'm gonna go to Housemark, I'm gonna learn about gameplay. And when they did Returnal, I was like, okay, this is a very different thing that I see from the rest of the market. They managed to make arcade have a space in AAA and then tell a haunting story through it. That's so cool. And so when I got the chance to work on Saros, I really wanted to preserve some of that feeling that, yes, it is a game-ass game. This is an arcade game, right? And you should feel like it's a game, but you should also feel like the space is believable, like the character is believable. The groundedness of it is a strength. And this contrast, again, I love contrasts. This contrast is an edge that we have, because we want this realistic canvas, and then we want the arcade paintbrush to paint on top. And it does bring challenges, right? When I was designing the bullet visuals, I made this very noisy thing with electric arts and this and that, and I put it in the game, and the game designers were like, no, man, we can't see anything. I'm like, oh, okay, let's strip it down. But now, if you've seen the game, when a bullet is far away, is way more readable. As it gets close, and you've already made your decisions, there's animations on that bullet. Detail comes alive. And that's sort of the contract that you make, right? Is I'll put the details where they don't bother you. But it is a beautiful challenge. It's really, really awesome to be able to go into that mind space as an art director.
We talk a lot about graphical power, and obviously the leap between generations gets less and less. Like the leap between PS3 to PS4 is not what the PS4 to PS5 was. As an art director, where do you think we still have ways to go in that space? Is there things you're seeing like, oh, I wish we could get more power in the hair or the skin? Obviously, the model for Arjun in this is extremely high quality, but is there any kind of roadblocks you're running up against, thinking, oh, I wish we could do a little bit more? Or do you feel like you have a full kind of tool set to work with?
I think there's two sides to this, right? You know, more power, more possibilities, and just putting more stuff on the screen and having it can be a bit of a trap. You know, good art direction, it's about removing sometimes and focusing on the shape language, focusing on the color palette. Is the image working without all the detail? And because you can end up hiding mistakes in the detail, right? But then on the other side, what I would really use more GPU power on, for example, is the amount of reactivity in the world. Because that's also what we are specialists of, you know. And the gun is your voice, and you scream at the world, and the world has to answer back. The enemies have to answer back. I think we did a good job with that. But if I had any other, ounce of power in there to go at this rock solid, smooth 60 FPS, which we do on PS5 base and Pro, I would just add more reactivity.
I get that. You mentioned kind of designs. Obviously, Arjun and his weapons are like fairly realistic. They're like kind of modern futurist, whereas a lot of the guns in Returnal were these alien things that you were coming across. What can you speak to the decision to make it a more militaristic design? Is that just based on the fact that this is obviously you're visiting this colony, you're trying to work out what happened to these first three groups, and is there, you won't be able to answer this, but like later in the game, does it evolve to a more alien look, or is it always these kind of militaristic style weapons?
So I'll leave you the joy of discovering our later weapons. But we wanted the player fantasy to be a bit different. And so we wanted to start with this very strong world building aspect to Soltari. And one of the best way to do it is the equipment. Because as we said, that's a voice. That's you express your verbs through some of these. So being able to give that very strong grounded identity from the get-go, it's very important to get that fantasy going. Of course, that's not an endpoint, but it's somewhat setting the world and the fantasy for you, and then you understand, okay, this is my role in the world, this is who I am as a character, and then you're off into this journey, right? But I would say that even if our weapons look, a little bit more grounded, then when you start looking at our particle effects and the impact that they have on the enemy and the way that we added the juice, for example, on the shotgun that you've been able to play with, it's definitely not a normal weapon.
And just finally, as we're coming to the end here, by the time this goes out, will be about a month from launch. How are you feeling personally, having essentially shipped now your first game with Housemark?
I'm stoked, man. It's so cool. You guys are the first ones that we can talk to after, having played the game and hearing your reactions, seeing the way you see the game. it's so beautiful, and it makes it all very real because it's just been us, just working and absconding and doing their little things. But now it's off to the world, and I couldn't be prouder of my team. And we worked together so hard to just get this to be the absolute best that we can. And now that it's gonna go out, I am so happy and so excited for it. Of course, there's like always that tiny little scary thing about it. But I would say I'm like 90% excited, 10% scared.
Are you going to be watching people stream it that first night?
I'll watch everything. I read all the comments. I'll watch what you write. I'll watch everything. And the thing is, my mama watches everything as well. So if I miss something, she's going to send it to me.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
It's my pleasure, man. Thanks a lot.